Hey everyone, welcome back to the Library of Parthos. My name is Sarah, and today we're going to be talking about the book Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. First of all, wearing my Meow Wolf shirt today because I love Meow Wolf, and if you've not been, I highly recommend going. It's quite an experience. Anyway, off topic, but if I were to compare this book to a store, it would be Dan Flash's because the patterns are so complicated. That is a reference to I Think You Should Leave, which if you've not watched the Dan Flash's skit, recommend it. It's pretty funny. Anyway, so getting back to this book, it started off well. I thought the characters were well developed. They were relatable. They were interesting, quirky. It was a really good start in developing the characters and the world that these characters are living in my opinion. However, I feel like it just went off the rails. This was like trope vomit. Like, there was just so much going on, so much that didn't really make sense, and so much that had like nothing to do with the story. So let me give like a quick summary. This is the story of Hallie Welch. She is a chaotic good gardener. And Julian Voss, who comes from this very well-respected family that owns a local winery. He is very schedule and structure oriented. And so Hallie had this massive crush on him when they were in high school. They had this super intimate moment where they almost kissed but didn't. And this story takes place 15 years later, where Julian is back in town and Hallie is now working as his gardener. They have this past and they have this chemistry that comes to light during their interactions. So that's the spoiler-free summary, pretty much what's on the back of the book if you are reading that. So kind of getting into my thoughts on the story. As I mentioned, I thought the characters were well developed. We get to meet Hallie and we find out pretty early on that she is just very like spontaneous, spur of the moment, doesn't really make plans or have a schedule of any kind. And she's recently lost her grandmother, so she's dealing with that. And we also learned that as a child, her mother moved around a lot. It kind of sounded like she was a groupie. As a child, she moved around a lot and didn't really have any structure until she moved in with her grandmother when she was in high school, and that kind of brought her a little bit of stability. Julian, on the other hand, is a professor at Stanford, and he is taking time off over the summer to write his book. And he has this whole like structure that he follows with these writing blocks, and he has to be writing during that time. And then he has scheduled breaks, and like everything is like minute for minute is accounted for. And we find out that he does struggle with some anxiety and has had panic attacks in the past during some pretty major events in his family's history. So those are kind of the important details about the characters, and we learn all of that pretty early on, so I feel like we get a really good picture of them, their interactions, and it was really fun to read about them. And then things started to get a little bit off. Hallie ends up working as the gardener at Julian's family's winery. And she calls his mother and says, hey, I know I've done work for you in the past. I feel like your guest house could use some work, and I'd love to do that for you, so that she can see Julian. But at the same time, she decides to write him this secret admirer note to like get her feelings out. And like, it's not like they didn't have chemistry. Like, they had chemistry right away. And Hallie like says multiple times, like, I'm pretty sure he's attracted to me, but let me just unrelated confess my feelings in this secret admirer note that I'm not going to sign. Like, it was like completely like two different plots and couldn't decide between which one, so let's just stick with both and see what happens. So that's where I was kind of like, wait a second, what's going on here? Personality-wise, you know, Hallie's very bubbly, like sunshine kind of personality. Julian's very like structured and rigid and grumpy. So we've got that going on as well. And so they're just having these interactions, and Julian cannot remember who Hallie is. And Hallie's pretty upset about that, because like she's been crushing on this guy for 15 years and he does not remember this very pivotal moment in her teenage years. And so she's kind of like hesitant to get too involved with him until he can remember those events, which he does, like here. Okay, so like not even at the end of the book. He realizes it like, I don't know, 3/4 of the way through. But the love letters continue. Julian is like getting these love letters. I think there's like 2 of them. And then he's like, these are pretty profound, but I have feelings for Hallie, but I'm gonna write back. Like, it's just so back and forth. And so it gets to the point where they are in the beginnings of a relationship. They are attracted to each other. And Hallie is like, oh no, I've been reading these love letters as his secret admirer. I should probably tell him, but I don't want it to ruin what we have. So I'm gonna write another letter to confess that it was me writing the letters the whole time. Which like, at the moment that he remembered who she was, she could have been like, oh yeah, like, I have had a crush on you for years. And it would have been fine. Like, it would have worked. There didn't need to be like this random confession at the beginning of this story. So she writes this other love letter, explaining that it was her and why she did it. And then she's like, oh no, he can't find out like this. So she leaves in the middle of the night to go get it. And then he has a panic attack because she's missing. And locks himself away for like 2 weeks. And so Hallie is like, oh no, I made him so mad from this letter. And it had nothing to do with the letter. He was just afraid because he didn't know where she was. And his anxiety set in. So 2 weeks pass where Julian is just kind of just in survival mode, working on his book, and he doesn't realize how much time has passed because he kind of shut down after his panic attack. And Hallie's thinking this whole time like, oh, I ruined it with these random letters that really don't have anything to do with the story. And then Julian realizes that he's been locked away for 2 weeks and feels like he needs to do this grand gesture to apologize to Hallie. So throughout the story, they're kind of changing for each other, right? Hallie's this like super chaotic person and he's very structured. So he's learning to loosen up a little bit and to kind of go with the flow. And he's learning that just because time is unaccounted for doesn't mean it's bad. Like, there can be good time that you are not planning for. And Hallie is learning that there are times where you need structure and routines and schedule, but you can put your own twist on them. So they're changing for each other, which I think is really great, that they're both realizing that they have strengths and weaknesses and how they can learn from the other. But it was Julian's gesture, like his big apology, that I was like, what? So Hallie always wears these like mismatched necklaces, right? It's like she just like randomly puts on necklaces. I think one belonged to her grandmother, one was just like a wooden one, like just a random collection of necklaces that she thinks will match whatever mood she's feeling for the day. So Julian gathers all of their closest friends, asks them to put on a bunch of random necklaces, and hands them pallets of flowers and says, plant them anywhere in the vineyard that you want. And that was his apology. That was his like, Hallie, you've changed me as a person. I love you. And I want you to know I accept you for the way that you are, was wearing necklaces and planting random flowers anywhere in the vineyard that they wanted, which seems kind of problematic. Like, I don't think you can just plant flowers wherever you want in a vineyard. Like, I don't think that's how it works. So I don't know. I just thought like, I thought it was like a cute idea, like a sweet like gesture, but like really that was it. Throughout the story, there is this like small locally owned winery that Hallie's grandma went to and was best friends with the owner, and like she has her table set aside, and the wine shop is struggling because there's a newer wine shop next door. And so Hallie has been like sabotaging it by like breaking their disco ball and stealing their flyers and stealing their cheese samples. And then Julian decides that he's going to help the smaller wine shop by like doing business with just them and like making sure that he hands out their business cards. He bought them a new awning. So like all of those things are happening in the book, and like he could have done something like that, or like he could have done something related to that, but no, it's just like, here's random flowers to put somewhere and we're wearing necklaces. At the end, I do really like this part, that Hallie has been putting off this project working for the local library because it was her grandmother's kind of wish that Hallie would take on that project at some point, and she didn't feel like she was ready. She understands that she needs to follow some sort of structure to be able to take on bigger projects like that, because people have deadlines and they have expectations, but she can still put her own spin on it. So anyway, so she gets ready to start this, and Julian does say that they bought new tables for the wine shop, and he brings Hallie's grandmother's table that she always sat at from the wine shop so that they can use that in the library. And it's kind of like this, like, you know, memory of her there, and for Hallie to show that like she's finally ready to take this step. So that was cute, and I feel like that could have been enough. Like we could have just had that. We didn't need the necklace planting thing in the vineyard. It was so weird. When I was finishing this, my thought was, because I've been playing around with Chatgpt quite a bit, I was like, it kind of feels like somebody typed into chat, write a romance story with every romance trope. So I tried it. And I will happily read you what came out of Chatgpt, which is basically the plot of this story. So if you don't feel like reading this, you can use this chat sample, this chat story, and kind of get the gist. Okay, so here's what I typed in. I typed in, write a romance story with two characters who used to be friends and are reunited. One is a secret admirer, the girl is very bubbly, and the guy is dark and brooding, and they do not get along at first, in the style of Tessa Bailey. I feel like chat delivered. So here's what we got. Samantha and Dylan were once the best of friends. They grew up together, went to school together, and shared a lot of memories. But as they grew older, their paths diverged, and they drifted apart. Samantha was now a bubbly, outgoing girl full of life and energy, while Dylan had become dark and brooding with a chip on his shoulder. Years passed, and Samantha and Dylan found themselves reunited at a mutual friend's wedding. At first, they didn't get along at all. Samantha was annoyed by Dylan's sullen attitude, while Dylan thought Samantha was too perky and cheerful for his taste. But as the night wore on, something began to change. Dylan couldn't help but be drawn to Samantha's infectious smile and carefree spirit. He found himself secretly admiring her from afar, wishing he could be as happy and carefree as she was. Samantha, on the other hand, couldn't help but notice Dylan's rugged good looks and mysterious demeanor. She found herself inexplicably drawn to him, even though he wanted nothing to do with her. As the night went on, the two of them found themselves talking and laughing together, despite their initial dislike for each other. They danced together, joked together, and even shared a few moments of silence, just enjoying each other's company. And as the night drew to a close, Dylan took Samantha aside and confessed his feelings for her. "I know we haven't always seen eye to eye," he said, his voice low and intense, "but I can't help the way I feel about you. You're like a ray of sunshine in my life, and I want to be a part of that." She reached out and took his hand, looking up into his eyes. "I feel it too," she said, her voice soft and hesitant. "I never thought you'd be interested in someone like me." Dylan took a step closer to her, pulling her into a gentle embrace. "You have no idea how long I've been wanting to do this," he whispered, pressing his lips to hers. As they kissed, Samantha felt her heart racing with excitement and anticipation. She knew that things wouldn't always be easy with Dylan, but she was willing to take a chance on him. And as they pulled away from each other, both of them knew that this was the start of something special. Basically, the plot of this book. I'm telling you, it was spot on. This book wasn't for me. There is another one, there's a sequel coming out about Julian's sister Natalie. Typically, if a book is okay, I'll usually still pick up the sequel because maybe I'll be more interested in those characters or in that story. Like maybe it was just something about this particular combination that I wasn't a fan of. But I can honestly say I have no interest in reading that one. I didn't like Natalie as a character. I thought she was pretty flat, and I really don't have any interest in reading more about her, especially fearing that that would be Trope Vomit as well. But anyway, not for me, not always a win. But I had fun playing around with Chatgpt and seeing if I could match the chaos that was this story. So that is the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.